so I need to get something off my chest. I have been thinking about it a lot these past 2 days. On Thursday, 2 days ago, we were driving to my grandparents' house. It is a 6 to 7 hour trip by car. My mom, my fiancé, and our 2 cats were with me. We had a pretty chill ride as always. Nothing like this has ever happened in my life, and I can remember clearly. We usually make this drive 8 to 10 times per year. I am 30 years old. At 23:45, we reached a longer stretch of road with a construction site where one side of the street was blocked. We had to wait at a temporary traffic light. This construction has been there for a few months already. We were waiting. My mom was in the front seat with me, and my fiancé was in the right back seat with our 2 cats. After about 1 minute of waiting, my fiancé, who usually sleeps the whole way, thankfully was awake. She suddenly said, "Hey, there is something." "Oh God." She started stuttering, trying to say there is a guy. But we did not really understand her at first. My mom and I turned around. I was thinking it might be some wild animal you do not usually get to see. But I could not see anything because of the darkness and the doors. Then my mom yelled, "Oh God, just drive." So I immediately locked the doors and started driving full speed through the red light. A fully black-clothed guy with a white mask, no holes for the mouth or eyes, was literally sneaking through the high grass toward the right back door of our car. He was crawling on his hands and knees, hoping we would not see him. We do not know if he was alone or if he had anything in his hands. But about half a meter away from our car, my fiancé saw him and potentially saved our lives. It looked as if he was checking whether someone was alone in the car. Keep in mind, it was about a 10-minute drive through a street with literally nothing around, except a small village a few kilometers ahead with about 150 people living in it. That village was about 15 minutes away from our final destination. We immediately called the police and informed them. They said they would forward the information, but that was all. We have had no further information from the police since then. I assume they did not really do anything, and by the time they would have arrived, the guy had probably disappeared. We were speculating whether this was just a dumb prank. But at that time on that road, literally 0 cars were driving through. Even on the way to the bigger cities, there were barely any cars on the road. So the chances that only about 1 car passes per hour are pretty high. My mom has had trouble sleeping since then, and I have been checking the car multiple times to see if there is any tracking device attached to it. Not that it would make much difference if he had won. I do not know what to think about this, except to tell everyone. Be extra careful at night and always lock your doors. This could have turned out very, very bad. I do not even want to imagine what this sick person had in mind. I have a really hard time believing this was just a prank because of how it happened and because it was in the middle of nowhere. What do you guys think? I still get shivers when I think about it. This happened around 3 years ago, when I was about 14 years old. My parents had been separated for a long time. I used to live with my mom during the week and with my dad on weekends. My dad always made significantly less money than my mom. He lived alone in a house that was honestly too big for one person, and he struggled a lot with paying rent. Then one day, one of his friends asked if he could move in. His friend, John, needed a place to stay, and my dad needed the money. So John offered to pay every week in exchange for one of the spare rooms. My dad agreed, and John moved in with us. Since I only stayed there on weekends, I did not see John that much. But whenever I did, I always felt uncomfortable around him. He was not really scary or aggressive. Honestly, he was usually nice, but there was just something off about him that I could not explain. I do not mean this in a rude way toward people with mental illnesses, but even back then, I could tell something about him was not right mentally. At some point, He had taken one of the drawers in our bathroom. One day, I looked inside it and found tons of pills. A worrying amount. I had no idea what they were for, and I still do not, but it freaked me out a little. My dad also always had kind of questionable friends, so I already did not love the idea of living with one of them. I was probably way too paranoid and way too obsessed with horror stuff at the time, but I even remember hiding a kitchen knife under my mattress in case he ever came into my room while my dad was not home. At the time, it felt more like a comical and ridiculous gesture than a real self-defense weapon, since John had never given me any real reason to be afraid of him. But for some reason, that knife reassured me. Even my dad did not really like leaving me alone with him. Not because John had ever done anything weird to me, but my dad used to say he was a little weird. Still, he needed the money, and John was his friend, so he stayed with us for around 2 months. The first month was normal. Nothing bad happened. John paid his part of the rent, and sometimes even bought groceries for us. Eventually, I got used to him being there. But during the second month, things started getting weird. I did not know it at the time, but John had stopped taking his medication. My dad and I have a cat, and John started making disturbing comments about it. He would say weird things about how my dad acted around the cat, implying disgusting stuff that was not true at all. At first, it just sounded bizarre more than dangerous. Like I said, he had always been kind of odd, but over time the comments got more intense and more detached from reality. Eventually, my dad started making sure John was either out of the house or in his room whenever I came over. Then one day, I got to my dad's house and noticed John was not there. Like usual, I asked where he was. That is when my dad told me he was not living with us anymore. Then he explained what happened. Apparently, John had been acting seriously unstable for the last few weeks. My dad told me about things John had been saying and doing when I was not there, things he never told me at the time, so he would not alarm me, and about how, a few days before I visited, they got into a huge argument. During it, John suddenly accused my dad of sexually abusing our cat, which, obviously, never happened. My dad told him to get out, but instead John completely lost it. He started yelling about how my dad had apparently abused me too, how he knew what was going on, and a bunch of other insane stuff. The argument kept getting louder and more aggressive until it eventually turned physical. I am going to skip some details, but my dad finally managed to force him outside and called the police when he refused to leave. When the cops showed up and saw the state he was in, they arrested him and took him away. After that, we never really heard from John again. But for weeks after it happened, I was terrified every time I went to my dad's house. I kept imagining John showing up while I was home alone, angry at my dad, and completely unstable. Every weird noise in the house freaked me out, but he never came back. Eventually, life moved on, and we kind of stopped thinking about it. His mom came one day to collect his stuff, and after that, he completely disappeared from our lives. Until around 3 months later. One night, my dad sent me a news article. John was on the front page, and the content made my stomach drop. Like I said before, John had stopped taking his medication, and apparently, 3 months after getting kicked out of our house, he ended up going into some kind of psychotic episode. According to the article, he walked into an apartment building carrying a hammer. He smashed windows, destroyed parts of the building, and eventually set it on fire. A woman trapped inside her apartment died in the flames. And he violently attacked another person in the building with a hammer before the police finally arrested him. The creepiest part was that nobody in the building even knew him. He had absolutely no connection to any of the victims. They were complete strangers. I am pretty sure he is locked up now. But even years later, My dad and I still think about it sometimes. What would have happened if he had stayed with us? It is crazy to think we lived with a man who was later accused of first-degree murder, months before he snapped. For as long as I can remember, my dad and I never got along. Our relationship was a constant battleground of screaming matches, whether we were arguing over childish, petty things or deep, genuine family issues. To be fair, he was not a monster on the surface. He supported us in his own twisted way, but he never actually held down a real job. Instead, his so-called work consisted of sketchy one-day gigs, scamming innocent people out of their hard-earned money, and spinning web after web of lies. Honestly, if it had not been for my mom working herself to the bone to provide for us, we would not be here today. She was the one who made sure I had food, a roof over my head, and went to school clean, dressed, and properly cared for. My dad, on the other hand, was just off. He was a coward wrapped in a tough guy act. He would puff his chest out and act incredibly hostile and threatening toward me. But the moment a grown man stood up to him, he would fold like a cheap lawn chair and run away. He was a pathological liar, constantly fabricating stories to make himself look like the hero or the victim. We never truly trusted him. But I never knew the darkest extent of his strangeness until recently, when my mom sat me down and told me what happened before I was born. It was 2006. My parents had just arrived in Germany, a completely new country for them. They had only been dating for about a year at the time. They were staying at my aunt's house temporarily, sleeping in the guest rooms until they could find jobs and get an apartment of their own. For the first 2 days, everything seemed completely normal. But on the third night, the atmosphere in that house shifted. My mom woke up at around 3 o'clock in the morning to a strange, scratching noise. When she opened her eyes, she realized her bedroom door was wide open. Standing right in the doorway was a tall, pitch-black silhouette. It was my dad. He was just standing there, perfectly still, staring at her in the dark. My mom felt a cold shiver run down her spine. She softly called out his name and asked what he was doing. Nothing. He did not blink. He did not move. He did not utter a single word. He just stood there, burning his gaze into her. As it turned out, my mom was not the only one who saw him that night. Down the hall, my other 2 aunts woke up to the exact same sight. My dad's dark silhouette, standing silently in their doorways, just watching them sleep. Spooked and angry, my oldest aunt finally got out of bed to confront him. But the moment she stepped into the corridor, the figure in her doorway vanished into the shadows. Confused, she crept down the hall to check the guest room. When she opened the door, she froze. My dad was fast asleep in bed, breathing heavily. The guest room was on the 2nd floor, and the floorboards in that old house groaned at the slightest step. There was physically no way he could have sprinted down the hall, climbed the stairs, and gotten back into bed silently in a matter of seconds. My aunt stood frozen in the corridor, her brain completely unable to process what she was looking at. The next morning, the women of the house huddled in the kitchen and talked. My mom and her sisters are devout Muslims who practice Islam daily. In our faith, there is a belief that those who live lives of constant deceit, cowardice, gambling, and theft open themselves up to dark spiritual forces. They eventually form a bond with a jinn, an unseen, often malevolent spirit. They realized then that my dad had not been alone. He had invited something dark into his life, and it was starting to manifest. As the years went on and I was born, his behavior only grew more bizarre and deeply unsettling. My mom told me she would regularly wake up in the dead of night and find him gone from the bed. She would look out the window, and see him wandering around the boundary of the house at the strangest hours, doing things that made absolutely no sense. He was so out of place, acting incredibly odd when everyone else was asleep. One night, she went outside to see what he was doing. He was standing near the edge of the property, staring directly into the pitch-black abyss of a nearby forest. He was eating something in the dark and muttering under his breath. When my mom frantically asked him what he was doing and who he was talking to, he slowly turned his head toward her. His eyes were vacant as he said he was talking to his mother. His mother had been dead for years. My mom lived in absolute, paralyzing terror for years, but she stayed to protect me until she knew I was old enough to follow her lead and run. A few weeks ago, she decided she had finally had enough. She could not risk our lives anymore. In the quiet, freezing hours of the early morning, while he was dead asleep, we packed our entire lives into a few bags and escaped into the dark. When we were finally safe, I asked her why we had to run like thieves in the night. Why could we not just tell him it was over? My mom looked at me, her hands still shaking, and whispered, "If he had known we were planning to leave him, I do not think we would have survived the night." It has been several years since we fled. In the beginning, he tried desperately to track us down, hunting for any scrap of information about where we went. Eventually, the trail went cold, and he stopped looking. I do not know where he is today, and to be honest, I hope I never, ever find out. I met Austin in the fall of 2024 through a message he had sent me over Facebook. I was lonely, really lonely. I had just moved to a new city and had very few friends because I had transferred from community college to university. So I gave him a chance. I messaged him back and we began chatting. We had a mutual friend, so I thought nothing of it. Maybe she had told him about me. Maybe he had seen me in passing. Time passed, and we grew much closer. Soon, I met him in person for a date. After that date, things began to move very fast. We hung out all the time and stayed at each other's places almost constantly. He was so sweet at first, and I was excited to be around someone I believed was genuinely kind. Fast forward a couple of months, and I moved into his apartment. I know it was a bad idea, but my current living situation was becoming increasingly toxic. I was living with 6 other girls. This was when things began to go downhill. He introduced me to his daughter, Lily. She was so sweet, and I adored her. He did not get to see her much because, as he told me, his baby mama was insane and keeping her away from him to control him. As I got to know him more, he began to grow more violent toward me. It started with small things like yelling at me over misplacing a phone charger or not putting something where he thought it belonged. As time passed, the instances of his anger increased and became more dramatic. He would scream at me almost every single day. It was always my fault. If he lost his keys, if I came home from work later than expected because he needed childcare, if I went to visit family or friends. It did not matter what the situation was. Everything was my fault. In addition to this, he was serially cheating on me, as I would later find out. He would text a multitude of girls from the ages of 15 to 22. He was a 25-year-old man. Some more time passed, and we moved to a much larger apartment in a different suburb of the city. Things were okay for a while, and I remained oblivious to his horrible internet activity. After a very late night at work, he woke me up and showed me a little tiny kitten. "I found her at work and brought her home for you," he whispered to me. I named her Stripe, and she was my soul cat. This little kitten and I did absolutely everything together. About a month passed. I came home from work pretty late in the evening, as I was a server at a bar. He was infuriated at me because he needed childcare so he could go to work. On top of that, he had lost his keys, and it was all my fault. He screamed in my face, called me names, and began to escalate the situation while I just sat there with tears rolling down my face. At some point in his anger, he grabbed Stripe and threw her against the bathroom floor because she bit him. She weighed less than 3 pounds, and it would not have hurt. She began to have a seizure and died in my arms on the way to the emergency vet as I gave her CPR. He had just killed my kitten in cold blood. For more context, he also had a dog named Cookie that he beat to the point of seizures. I am glad to say that I kept this dog and did not allow him to have her back. I felt so trapped. I had no friends to reach out to and no family I felt safe staying with. I was isolated with a very dangerous man. I feared walking in the door. I feared leaving the house. I feared him. I was so depressed that I was contemplating suicide because I could not afford the rent alone. He was spending my money on top of his own. I had nowhere to go and nobody to help me. More time passed. It was August 2025 when I uncovered his internet activity because one of the girls he was texting messaged me. That was the final straw for me, so I broke up with him. We still lived in the same space, however. He stayed in the bedroom with his daughter, and I stayed in my own room. Flash forward to November of 2025. He verbally assaulted me, saying absolutely nasty things. This escalated to him trying to choke me, throwing me all around the house, and being physical to the point that I feared for my life. I tried to leave, but he would not let me. He tried to take my animals and let them out somewhere. He tried to hold a gun to me. It was terrifying. I thought I was going to die. I could not call the cops. In the state I was in, they would have taken both of us in. They would have booked both of us. And he had gouged himself with his car keys to make it look like I had injured him. I had finals the next day and was scared to fail all of my classes, as I could not afford to repeat them. At some point I decided to take the risk and call the cops, but he broke my phone by snapping it in half. I decided to run for my life. He forcibly took my house key, but I had my car keys, so I ran. I drove until I got to my father's house and fell asleep on his couch. From that point on, he would not leave me alone. He sent over 100 calls and text messages per day, going from kind to abusive almost every 2 messages. I moved in with my very distant mom and took my animals somewhere safe. I pleaded with him to leave my apartment because he was not on the lease, but he repeatedly refused because he wanted to fix our family. I began to settle in at my mom's house and started seeing people I knew, reconnecting with old friends. As time passed, so did the holidays. I received over 50 calls on Thanksgiving and over 100 on Christmas and New Year's. He was still threatening me and still harassing me, so I remained at my mother's. I finally convinced him to leave my apartment by threatening a civil protection order, hoping he would leave me alone and that I would not have to go through with it, because I was scared it might be denied. On January 10th, I got to move back into my apartment. It was trashed. I spent 2 weeks working to put the pieces back together and resume some form of my life. In the past couple of months, I had started seeing someone long distance, casually. He was lovely and offered to help me clean up the pieces of my life, which was not something he had to do. My ex still harassed me from his own number as well as from fake numbers, posing as a stalker and threatening my life. He posed as a different person in some of the texts, saying he was going to get me. In February, I could not take it anymore. I filed for the civil protection order and was granted an ex parte based on my testimony. I was still getting texts from the fake numbers threatening me, saying they knew where I was and what I was doing. After the court hearing, it all stopped. It was finally silent. I was finally safe. He still tries to find ways to mess with me, like giving my number to people and saying I am easy, or making posts that relate to me. Friends tell me they have seen something weird. He tried to get family to reach out to me, but they would not. Now I am happy. I am seeing my childhood best friend, and we are in love. He is so kind and exactly what I need. I feel safe, but I still look behind my back all the time to see if someone is following me. I still get texts from numbers asking if I am easy and then saying they got my number from Austin. I still need to seek therapy. I still need to file a report of him violating his civil protection order.